It was supposed to be an ordinary morning in Atlanta. The kind of morning that doesn't make the news, doesn't change the world, just passes by, gray and silent. But sometimes, the smallest things, the quietest moments, carry the weight of eternity. And that morning, a man named Thompson bent down to pick up a single dollar bill. He didn't know it yet, but that tiny act, that small, almost meaningless gesture, would alter the course of 2 lives forever. This is a story about integrity, about doing the right thing when no one's watching, about compassion that costs nothing, yet means everything. In a city that moves too fast to notice, one man's simple decision became a mirror for what we've all forgotten, that sometimes the greatest miracles hide in the most ordinary corners of our lives. Thompson was 32, a mechanic by trade, a quiet man, the kind you see on the early bus but never remember by name. He lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment off Auburn Avenue, the kind of place that smelled faintly of old coffee, motor oil, and dreams that never quite made it past the door. He wasn't a bad man, just tired. Tired of being overlooked. Tired of working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Tired of being good when the world seemed to reward only the opposite. That morning, the rain had started before dawn, soft, rhythmic, the kind that makes the air hum with reflection. He pulled on his work jacket, faded blue, patches of grease along the sleeves, and stepped out into the gray. The city was still half asleep. Steam rose from manhole covers. A single streetlight flickered over cracked pavement, and there, just beyond the bus stop, a dollar bill lay pressed against the wet concrete. He saw it as he walked by. At first, he didn't think much of it, just another scrap of paper. But something, maybe habit, maybe hunger, made him stop. He looked around. Nobody in sight. No cameras, no witnesses, just rain and silence. He crouched down, fingers brushing against the soaked green paper. $1. He turned it over, about to slide it into his pocket, then paused. There was handwriting on it, barely visible, faded ink bleeding through the damp fibers. 3 words, small but deliberate. If found, help her. He frowned. The words made no sense. He looked again. The message was real, shaky, written with care. He slipped the dollar into his pocket, puzzled. The bus pulled up, brakes hissing. He stepped inside, still thinking about the message. Most people would have walked away that morning. Maybe you would have too. Because what's a single dollar worth anymore? To most, nothing. To Thompson, it became a question of conscience. Was he supposed to help someone? Was it fate? Or was it just nonsense written by a stranger lost in the city's noise? He didn't know then, but that soaked piece of paper carried a cry for help, one that only his kind of heart could answer. Thompson's day unfolded like any other. The garage was already buzzing by 8 a.m. Wrenches clinking, engines roaring, a gospel station playing faintly in the background. He clocked in, grabbed his rag, and dove into another routine repair. But his mind wasn't on the work. He kept feeling that folded dollar in his pocket like it was burning through the fabric. Help her. Who? By lunch, curiosity had turned into restlessness. He took the bill out again, staring at the faded ink. On impulse, he walked to the small convenience store next door, the kind run by old Mr. Daniels, who always greeted him with a tired smile. "Need change for the vending machine?" Daniels asked. Thompson hesitated. He handed him the dollar, but before Daniels could take it, he said softly, "Can I ask you something? You ever seen something written on a bill before?" Daniels chuckled. "Plenty. Folks write love notes, phone numbers, even prayers. Never know what's real." Thompson nodded, pocketing it again, but his chest felt tight. This wasn't just random. Something about that message felt, well, personal. He didn't know it yet, But somewhere, only a few blocks away, a woman named Lena sat on a cold bus bench, clutching a small, torn notebook, waiting for a miracle she no longer believed would come. That evening, Thompson left work later than usual. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, pools of light reflecting from street lamps and car headlights. And there, just beyond the bus stop, a dollar bill lay pressed against the wet concrete. He saw her, a woman sitting alone on a bench, thin coat, soaked sneakers, and a distant look in her eyes. She held something small in her hands, maybe a notebook or a folded piece of paper, and she was crying softly, like someone trying not to be heard. Thompson slowed down. He wasn't the kind to meddle, but something in him, that same quiet nudge that made him pick up the dollar, told him to stop. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket, feeling the damp dollar between his fingers. He glanced again at the words. If found, help her. It couldn't be. Could it? He took a few cautious steps closer. Ma'am, you okay? He asked softly, but his voice was swallowed by a passing bus. By the time he looked up again, she was gone. The bench sat empty, rain dripping from its edge. Only a small notebook lay where she'd been sitting. He picked it up slowly, the cover worn, pages curling. On the first page, in the same shaky handwriting, were those same words again. If found, help her. He stood frozen under the flickering streetlight, heart pounding. It wasn't coincidence anymore. Someone or something was trying to tell him something. He slipped the notebook under his arm, gripping the dollar tighter. The city around him seemed to fade, sounds muffled, time slowing. He didn't know where this was leading, but one thing was certain. The moment he chose to bend down for that dollar, his life stopped being ordinary. The rain had stopped, but the streets of Atlanta still shimmered under the amber glow of street lamps. Thompson walked home in silence, the notebook pressed against his chest like a secret. Each step echoed against the wet concrete, slow, unsure. He never believed in signs, but tonight felt different. That dollar, that message, that woman. Somewhere in the city's heartbeat, something invisible was connecting them. At home, the apartment felt smaller than usual. He flipped through the first few pages. Each entry was short, some dated weeks apart, others only words. Bus 77, hope is late again. Mama says forgive myself, but how? If found, help her. The entries stopped abruptly. No address, no phone number, just emotion captured in ink. Thompson leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He wasn't sure if this was a sign from God or just another weight he didn't ask to carry. He made a decision, a small one, but it would change everything. He'd find Lena.
Thompson walked slowly between the tracks, eyes searching for any sign of life. A makeshift tent made from tarps flapped in the wind. A few discarded shoes. Then he heard it. A soft cough, somewhere behind a freight car. He turned the corner and froze. There she was, Lena, sitting on an upturned bucket, scribbling into another notebook, hair tucked under a worn scarf. Thompson approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hey," he said softly, voice carrying over the hum of the tracks. "I think this belongs to you." He held out the notebook. She looked up, eyes wide, startled, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lena whispered, "How did you find me?" He smiled gently. "Guess you found me first." They sat there for a while, two strangers under a gray sky, and talked. Lena told him about her mother, about losing her job and home in the same week, about writing messages on dollar bills because she couldn't afford a phone and hoped someone, anyone, would notice. Thompson listened, each word carving its place in his heart. He realized that the message on the dollar wasn't just a cry for help, It was an invitation to be human again. He offered her coffee and a ride to the shelter, but Lena hesitated. He wondered how many other messages were hidden in the city, waiting for someone to notice. At the garage, his coworkers joked about the game, the weather, the endless bills. Thompson smiled but barely heard them. His thoughts were back at the shelter. By lunch, he found himself scribbling a note of his own on a scrap of paper. If found, stay kind. He slipped it into the pocket of a stranger's jacket that hung on a hook by the door. That small act settled something inside him. Days passed. He checked on Lena every evening after work. Some nights she was there, writing. Others she had disappeared into the noise of the city. Each time she returned, she looked a little stronger, her words a little more certain. People around Thompson began to notice the change. The foreman caught him paying for a coworker's lunch. A neighbor saw him fixing a stranger's car for free. He didn't plan these things. They just seemed to happen now, naturally, like breathing. But the more good he tried to do, the more resistance he met. His boss warned him that spending extra time on unpaid work would cost the shop. A coworker accused him of showing off. One evening, his paycheck came short after he covered the cost of a customer's parts. He saw a shape he recognized at the end of Auburn Avenue. Lena was standing outside a diner, talking quietly to a young mother with 2 children. She pressed something into a woman's hand before crossing the street. When Thompson reached her, she smiled. "I gave her the $1, she said simply. "The same one you found. It doesn't belong to either of us anymore." They stood there in the fading light, the sounds of the city swelling around them, horns, footsteps, laughter. For the first time, Thompson understood that the act of helping wasn't a single moment. It was a chain, each link forged by someone willing to stop and care. He walked her back to the shelter, but in his heart, he knew that what had begun with a single coin of paper was turning into something larger. He moved through it quietly, the rhythm of work already tugging at his shoulders. Yet something inside him had shifted. He no longer felt invisible. Every small encounter seemed to carry weight, as if the world itself had leaned a little closer to listen.